Okay, as you see from the stream, I'm trying to reconnect. Ah, got back. Thank goodness for that. So there we go, seeing like we're back from there. So the way we're going to do things, if you're new to the channel, is to what we're going to do now, because the server issue or something crashed during this, we're doing a short qualifying and then we're going to go straight into the race. So just waiting for everybody to come back in. I think we're just waiting on John B from, I know I can see only one Alpine. Is Songod in here somewhere? Yeah, only one Alpine and one Haas, so we're just waiting on 2 more people now. Yep, and we got the Sun God now. We're just waiting on John B. Well done, Cody's. Next thing we're going to have is that the lobby's going to be glitched and we're going to have every safety car under the sun. Oh no, I've said too much. Yeah, server's genuinely bad. Yeah, so it's just FRI John B we're waiting for now, so I'm just wondering where he is. Yep, 5 seconds now, and doesn't look like he'll be with us in the Alpine, so it looks like we're going to get a show on the road. So for take 2 now, for the short qualifying session across the Netherlands, so this is all the one for pole position now. I think the amount of time lost thanks to the server issues is probably worth an extra 15 minutes of qualifying time as it is, so it feels like we're almost back on track already. I can imagine everyone now will be looking to start on soft compound tyres. It does do a little bit of a strategy, but then again, it can throw some things into the mix as well. See, everyone's selecting their tyres. It's a lovely track to look at this. So there we have it, just the one qualifying session this time. And maybe it's a chance for Sun God to redeem himself. Well, he said only P16, which he didn't seem too happy with on the chat. Maybe this is the time to make amends, so keep your chin up, and hopefully this will be a good qualifying session for Sun God. As we'll see, drivers already coming out. Already there's an AlphaTauri with Jake Sharrock. Let's go on board with him. But first off, let's get all the telemetry and everything up. That would be helpful, wouldn't it? Please can I check whether you're lagging in the qualifying session? Well, you better get out of the pits then, mate. But yes, so politely, I'll more than happily do that for you. It's got a mix of strategies. You get, so far we've got TD and Jean Carlos out on the medium compound tyres. I'm only joshing with you, Sun God. Only joshing with you, pal. And now that he's coming out of the pits... Yes, it seems like you are lagging a little bit, mate. I think the... Okay, apart from the way it started, it's looking a little bit better for you now. But still a little bit twitchy. But you're not jumping in front and back and forth of each other like you were before. So it looks like connectivity is better. But it's probably not quite where you want it to be. I think will help if we go on board. Yeah, I can see it's definitely twitching a little bit. So unfortunately, it's not quite where you want it to be. We'll go on board then with Jake Sharrock, who will be the first person to set a benchmark time. And this will all be for pole position now, so I think... So we have one of the cars ahead getting out of the way. So the Ferrari stays out of the way, and Lotus Renault has retired already. So it looks like may have crashed out there. What does Jake Sharrock do as a benchmark time? It's an 11 dead. Not a bad one to kick it off. As now Platy comes across the line, and it's not quite ahead of the AlphaTauri. Ripley goes fourth fastest with a time which nowhere near as representative. Supermac goes into P4 now. What's the other AlphaTauri looking to do? Mr. Wiggles. He's just starting his time. Who else is coming across the line? It's Jean Carlos. I think he was just getting out of the way, so it's not quite a representative time that he's going to be looking to put on the board. Greg is still in the pits. The Mercedes is out. Iros J is looking to start his lap as well in the Alfa Romeo. AMS Fairley goes fastest there on the mediums with a 1:11 flat. Sam Ken is the Red Bull behind him. McLaren gets out of his way, and John B has joined, so we are going to get a full grid. Which basically means we know where pole position is going to be going, just as long as nobody crashes. Let's see if he joins the session. Sam Ken does a 24.8. It's not a bad time to kick it off. As the times are starting to come down now. They're not quite near the 10.5s that we've seen previously, but still a lot to play for here. What does Sam Ken do for a second sector time? It's a 49.5. That's not too bad. It takes a lot of curb on that right hander. If you touch it at the wrong angle, I mean, you'll be sent flying basically. And Sean Gregory is still in the pit, so he hasn't started a time. Iros J goes to the top with a 1:10.9. Don't think Sam Ken's going to beat this one, but it should be a respectable time nonetheless. It's a 1:11.1. So that is a very, very good time to start things off. What does Sun God do? 11.5. It's 11.7 actually to start off his run. IRL Hyper is on soft compound tyres, so that'll be where he starts the race. Not the best time to kick everything off. Yellow flags more or less everywhere, but I think that's everyone just trying to get out of the way. The Aston Martins are still in the pits, so it's 49.6 for IIRL Hyper. This looks like to be a much more comfortable time as well. But oh, he's lost the back end there, where that will cost him about a second or so. He's still struggling to get a lap together, which is a shame. And Sun God has left the session, so I think it'll probably be to reboot his internet, which hopefully, fingers crossed, it goes well for him. What does IIRL Hyper do for a time? It's only 1 minute 12. Definitely not what he would have wanted. And KZ Babo comes into the pits. Iros J, who has set the benchmark time. It looks like he's starting a new one with that on 2 lap old soft tyres. And he's lost it. Looks like Supermac is out in the Alpine on an outlap. It's APS Greg who's looking to set his time now. It's only a 13.8, and Hyper has spun yet again, so still haven't quite yet found the sweet spot in that McLaren. As we'll go on board with Mr. Wiggles there. What does he do for a second set time? He's a 10th down on his best, so still got a ways to recover. You can see already paint marks, so you can tell he's been off the track. But it's nice bit of attention to detail from Cody's, at least on this game. John God's still in the pit, and Hyper still looking to set his time. Who else is out? So Supermac is looking through to start his outlap. Hyper, I imagine, will be coming into the pits. Yeah, he's not deploying any energy. Yes, he is coming into the pits. Fairly is 10-10s on an outlap. Iros J is coming in. What is Greg doing? He's 1.6 up, but this isn't going to be the fastest time in the world. It's only 11.8. It's not quite high up when he needs to be. Mr. Wiggles is up on his time. Jake Sharrock, I think... Yes, Jake Sharrock goes faster, so the 10.9. And TD just beats that with a 10.6. Very, very close times here, but there's not a lot of time to actually get around this track. So, like I said earlier on my previous stream, it is... A 10th of a second is big in any close. It's probably even closer... or whatever here on this shorter track. Wiggles does a 10th, goes 10th with an 11.4. It's not a bad lap there. As the Red Bull of Gene Carlos spins, what does Supermac do for his time? He improves to an 11.5. Greg comes round the final corner. KZ is on an outlap. And it looks like Gene Carlos pulls into the pits. If he started on those medium tyres, he certainly needs to protect them. 10-10 has invalidated his time, so he won't be improving, that's for sure. But 10-10 looks like he's... TD rather has come into the pits. What can Ripley do to improve his time? He goes across the line, and he does a 10-3 to go fastest. That is a very quick time. I think we'll try and stay on board with somebody for a single lap there. Otherwise, I'll be running out of breath very, very quickly. We'll go on board with Aki AMG, who goes round to the long left-hander, and you have to be so careful on how much throttle you put out of that. Otherwise, you will be sent spinning. Has come through this very twisty end to the first sector. What does he do for the long left-hander? Drops it down to 6th. So it's very tight on the entry line, which is exactly what you need to do. And drops down to 6th gear. Takes a very conservative line. Still taking... Not taking as much curb probably as he needed, but more just a case just to keep the car on the track. And these curbs are very, very unforgiving on this game. Around Zandvoort, where you almost get like a bit of an indent or gradient, where you step over it too much and you try to get greedy, it will send you spinning. So it's an 11.2 that Aki has got to beat. That's his own personal best time. Goes round the banked corner. And he opens the DRS slot now. What does he do? Can he improve on his time? Yes, he does. It goes to an 11 dead, which is only good for 8th position at the moment. What can IIRL do in the Alfa Romeo? Yellows in Sector 2 and Sector 3. IIRL Hyper is on his outlap, so hopefully, let's see if he can get his lap together, it seems. It's a 24.4, which is a very fast time, but he goes wide! He goes wide and he loses it almost, and oh, that is a massive shame. IIRL looking very strong there with that first sector, but he's got dirt all over his tyres, which will have completely ruined his momentum. TD is on his outlap in the Ferrari, having been dislodged by his teammate who went fastest with a 1 minute 10.3. That's a shame definitely for Ross. He was looking very, very strong with that particular lap. And Hyper has gone wide yet again. He has not been able to find the sweet spot so far with this track. Massive shame for him. Sam Ken has had his time invalidated. Aki, unfortunately, is he must have backed off this one. I don't think he's going particularly menacingly fast with that one. So what is AMS Fairley going to do with his time? He goes second now with a 10.6. The times are starting to come down. It is a very, very difficult track. I certainly agree. I mean, you almost deserve the 25 points for just keeping consistent around here, much less going fastest. Which means if whoever's streaming on Sunday will guarantee to see me crash. IIRL is up on his best by a 10th. Can he find a few more tenths going into the sector? As TD goes 10.1 and goes fastest with that time rather. That is a brilliant time. Looks like the Ferraris look to be in command of this qualifying session. I think John B has joined the session, but I don't think he was able to select a car, whereas IIRL has actually lost a little bit of time in that second sector. Hopefully this will be enough to take him up to about 5th or 4th place, but still a bit more time to find in the Alfa Romeo, as when he goes wide and has him actually invalidated his time. The one place where he did not need to go outside of the track. And unfortunately, it hasn't served him well, as Mr. Wiggles has decided that he's going to set his fastest time now on the Red Bull soft compound tyres. You just see how much dirt is built up on that McLaren of IIRL Hyper. And the Bullet is finally out in the Aston. Oh, and it looks like, what is John B going to do? He's left it very, very late to come out. But is the Alpine going to come out? Are we going to see a last-minute lash from FRA John B? If he's going to get out, he's got to get out now, because he's got to get in those banker times. Let's go on board with Hyper. Let's see if he can claw back some of that deficit. What does he do for a first time? 24/7, not too bad. Drops down to 5th, so quite conservative there. And drops down to 2nd as well. It's all about getting this out, and it goes wide again. This is not really a track for Hyper. Crashmaster, how are you doing? Great to see you. Great to have you on board the channel as always. And that's it. If you're new as well to the channel, do give a shout and let's see how well everybody's doing. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like a strong qualifying at all for IIRL Hyper. I think he's got to wait just another lap to clean off those tyres. But is he going to go for a no one? Yes, he is. And Sun God struggling with internet problems, but you've done one better than you done last time in qualifying, so I suppose there'll be some commiserations to you, but the internet problems obviously a massive problem as well, so commiserations to you, Sun God. I had that problem as well when I couldn't even race at one point. I had to pull out last minute, which is a massive shame for me. And Hyper, can he keep it through? Yes, he can. Drops down to 5th, 6th, and goes down to 3rd to 2nd. And looks like he's kept this one tidy. Looks to have gotten so far of a lap in. He's got DRS open now. He's just got this last sector to go. Can he keep this one clean? 49.5, so that's a strong time. Just got to keep it clean through this part. Yep, it goes stays and then doesn't invalidate his time. Oh, but he does invalidate his time, and and 1010 disqualified, having been parked in a dangerous location. Oh my goodness, and that is such a shame for IIRL, for Hyper there. How much more time is left in this sector? As Lotus Renault is, I don't know what he was getting out of the way of there. It must have been the Red Bull. But it's only a minute to go now in this qualifying session. Let's see what happens here. Unfortunately, Sun God is still down as high as P12. Hyper has retired from the session. Let's roll on board with the Aston Martin to see what he does. I think I might put it down to commentator's curse for your benefit, Hyper, so apologies for that. But if there's anything, I really was rooting for you. What can the Aston Martin do? They've left it very, very late. John B has actually gone P2. I think we're actually going to go on board with him, because it's only about 2/10 he's got to find. It'll be a late attempt to go in pole position, but he's 700ths down. And he hasn't got much left in terms of energy to use. So that looks like TD may have pole position in the bag. What does he do? He's 100ths down. What does he do when he comes across the line? What's TD doing as well? He's 2/10 down on his best. John B is 100th down on his best. Goes round to the outside of the long left, wrong right-hander. And he knows he's not going to improve, so he comes into the pits and he wrecks the 60-mile-an-hour board. Oh, so it looks like a bit of controversy here. So apparently John B is not allowed to set a time in this one because of what happened in the last lobby. So who else is out there still to complete a time? It looks like it's just Mr. Wiggles, who unfortunately has dropped down. Greg as well. Is the Aston Martin still out? Bullet's up into 4th position with that time, so strong one from him. Keep your chin up, whatever happens. I think Jim Carlos, whatever happens, mate, keep your chin up. I'm sure it was... these things happen, particularly when it's your first time. But well done to TD for getting pole position. I think just waiting for everybody now to cross the line, and that will be it. That will be the end of the session. So we have it in controversial circumstances. The sides of front, but we have TD taking pole position on what was a very, very good lap. John B in 2nd position, but maybe having his collar felt by the stewards by possibly for setting on that one is not supposed to. Ripley in P3, Bullet P4, and Platty P5. that kind of rounds out the top 5. As we go down the order as well, we have Sun God P15, John Carlos 16, Hyper, Lotus Renault, Sean Gregory, and 1010, who was disqualified as well. Well done, TD, for your second pole position of the IIRL season. So now we come to the 5-minute break. So I think during the 5-minute interlude, guys, what we'll probably talk about is what are your thoughts for the upcoming Brazilian Grand Prix. There's apparently a rumour that Lewis Hamilton will be taking a 5-place grid penalty for changing one of his engine components. Yeah. Mercedes really are pondering an engine change, but it would be good to do in a track where they're not necessarily strong at anyway, because that's probably the closest thing to damage limitation that they can do. Yeah. I think whatever happens, they're going to be outclassed, I think, by Verstappen and Red Bull in those high altitude conditions. So maybe taking that engine penalty may be the best thing in hindsight. So 5-place grid penalty there for Lewis Hamilton. But the question is, will Max Verstappen have to take any more grid penalties? It's probably unlikely, given how reliable that Honda engine has been. Yeah, I think that it'll have to take something pretty extraordinary, I think, for Max to have a penalty. I think the fact that they've engine regulations come a long way. I think ever since the olden days, like in the 2000s, where they just put a new engine in every time. The engine was seizing up with 5 laps to go in Mexico. Was that for Max or for Lewis, Padge? But more problems, I think, for Hamilton, and it just gets that harder and harder. I think it certainly feels more and more that the race is going, the championship rather, is going Max Verstappen's way. So if Hamilton does take a penalty, And here we have, it's about coming up to 15 seconds to go now until we have the formation lap for this Dutch Grand Prix. I think Alfa Ross found one thing, it's not over till it's over, but it certainly feels like Max has the strongest car, which I'm not going to argue against, but it's like I said, it's not over till it's over. As everyone comes across now to set their formation lap, with John B obviously in P2. And we've already had a spinner in Bullet. And Bullet has left the session, which is a bit of a tumultuous track, this one. It's certainly tricky, not quite for the faint-hearted. They should promote Platty, I think, up into 4th position, all things considered, unless Bullet can get a move on, and obviously if we take his position. So I think absolutely, guys, just make sure you keep this one clean, as everybody now comes round the long bend. We have a few people starting on the harder tyres. We have 1010, Sean Gregory and Lotus Renault. The top 8 are on softs, and we have 6 drivers on the mediums, 10, 12 and 15th position, all starting on the soft compound tyre. Oh, Ripley has had a spin as well. This track is becoming more and more adventurous by the day. And Hyper looks to have been disqualified from the session, so he's obviously gone back onto the grid. As TD takes his slot, where's 4th place lined up? So he's obviously ghosted right now, so he'll be taking his place alongside the grid. But yeah, sort of controversial how this grid kind of works out in the end. But everybody looks to have formed up on the grid. It's a weird camera angle, this one, for which to start the race, so I think we may go on board. So what's going on here? Haven't quite got the lights up yet, but it has joined. Okay, what's happening here? Oh, here we go. 5 lights come on, and the race is underway. Looks to be a good start from TT at the moment. He already takes there, and Platty already up. Plus then the Ferrari of Ripley has had an absolute man. There's carnage already at the first corner. The Ferrari, the Red Bull and the Williams all look to have gone off, and I think immediately that is going to throw off yet another safety car. But everybody around, Bullet is in P2. AMS Fairley's in P3. Platty looks to have got a good start, but unfortunately missed out thanks to the contact there, which is now into 4th position. A big gap between the two AlphaTauris of P5 and P6. Jake Sharrock and Mr. Wiggles. IIRL J is in 7th position. KZ in 8th. 9th is Aki. And 10th is APS Greg in the other Mercedes. Sumgod has made up his time and made up into 11th position. And FRA John B is down to 15th position. So that could not have been a better start for TD in the Ferrari, and it looks like Ripley at the back of the field, I think he may have some front wing damage. Yeah, you can see his end plate has damaged, and now what we have here is, you can see on the screen, we have predicted pit stop strategies. You can go one stop and go onto the harder tyres, or you can play 2 stop and be fastest or overall. Bullet looks to have dropped down. It looks to have had a very, very bad exit there, and he's coming, yes, he's coming into the pits. So that doesn't quite bode well for the Aston Martin, as TD leads the field away from P1 and looks to have got an absolutely lightning start, and that was exactly what the Ferrari driver needed, as AMS Fairley. But yeah, it looks like Sumgod as well has retired from this session, it seems. So I don't know whether he may have had damage there, but a lot of drivers coming into the pits. Maybe the connectivity was so bad for... Yes, and he says the connectivity was rather bad for him, so commiserations, unfortunately, to Sun God. You were doing really, really well coming up to 11th as well, and racing on short notice as well. So commiserations to you as well. With TD already getting the lead that he needs. Now that Bullet has unfortunately retired from the race as well. It seems Sean Gregory may be having some issues as well, so I'm not sure who's been retiring from where, but the leader has gotten away very, very well. We'll go back to the interval time so we can see how everybody is doing. The closest battle on track seems to be between the Mercedes and the Williams. Feels like it's been a very long time since I've said something like that. Mr. Wiggles sets the fastest time so far, fastest lap rather, in the AlphaTauri with the 13.1. DRS has now been enabled on the cars. So now the rear wing will open when they're within 1 second of the car in front. And now Wiggles is coming up to an even closer battle, fighting his teammate. He's on the softer compound tyres, where his teammate is going longer on the mediums. So more than likely a one-stop strategy is on the cards for him. Sun God has left the session, so commiserations to him obviously with his poor internet connection there, as has Bullet. We'll go on board with the AlphaTauris, running 4th and 5th. Very, very good result for them. With 7/10 behind, so it's not really much to get the benefit of overtaking with DRS. Suppose it can help you stay with the car in front and set you up for the first corner, but you're not going to get many overtakes from that position there unless you're absolutely ballsy, it seems, as John B is now moved up into 11th position and now sits behind IIRL, who looks to have had a very, very bad exit out of that banked left-hander, and John B is already passed. Oh, and the Mercedes got off. Oh, and the Mercedes and the Williams and the Red Bull, they've all gone off as well, and unfortunately quite a few people crashing when they come off of that banked corner. This is certainly a very tricky track for everybody to sort of tell, and Jean Carlos has got a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. But already as soon as John B has an issue, everything kind of falls into his hands in a way. So a lot of carnage there. We have about 2, 3, 4 corners there. So it must have been KZ, the Williams of Lotus Renault, and obviously Jean Carlos as well, who's got his 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. But John B on the soft compound tyres is doing exactly what he needs to do. 1010 has got DRS thanks to APS Greg, who should be protected from the Alpine, who is on the soft compound tyres. That's going to give him a pace advantage that he's that the tyre compounds will give him, but it'll be a very much earlier pit stop. But you can see just how quickly he's getting onto the back of the Alfa Romeo. Looks close enough to attempt to move. It goes down to the inside. It goes round to the right-hand corner, and there you have it. That's up into 7th position now for the Alpine, who is slowly but surely doing his thing, recovering through the track. And the AlphaTauri of Jake Sharrock has lost his front wing. That will be another position gained for FRA John B. So it's Aki at the moment who is the next target. So yellow's in sector 3, so one of the Alfa Romeos has gone in. Looks to be Iros J, and the AlphaTauri is right in everybody else's way. It's a little bit naughty there. You know you have a damaged car, so you need to make sure you stay out of the way. As Greg now struggling to defend. Oh, was there a little bit of contact there between Hyper and the AlphaTauri? It looks like there might have been. As we have the Williams ahead of the Mercedes, ahead of the Alpine, and ahead of the Alfa Romeo. The drive that John gets out of this banked corner is crucial. It's so helpful to him to make sure he gets the toe that he needs. With DRS and slipstream available to him, as he goes down to the inside, what does he do? He lunges past him there. And the AlphaTauri gets another penalty for speeding in the pit lane. So now already John B is now up into 5th position. But he's obviously about 10 or so seconds off of TD's lead. So weirdly enough, we haven't had a safety car yet in this race. So we're going to go on board with the Alpine as he fights the Williams. Oh, and he spun! He spun! Unbelievable stuff! And he's hit the back. Unbelievable scenes here, guys, as FRA John B spins out and once he got too much on the curb, and now the Alpine has dropped down to 9th position with dirt, and that is not going to do his tyres any good at all. But he's got on going, and this is one of those survival of the fittest races, it seems. And has he got any extensive damage on that car? Looks like it may have hit the diffuser, so we'll just see what his lap times are, just to see if any of the damage that he has got is particularly threatening in terms of performance. It looks like he's doing well enough to hold it, but ahead of John B is the Red Bull of Sam Ken. Curbs really are terrible on this game. I mean, they will send you straight to the Shadow Realm if you're not careful. We'll come back to him a little bit later. As for now, 1010 is behind the Mercedes, who catching up to him on harder compound tyres. So this is a very, very good run so far from 1010. As things look to be stabilising with the leaders. So we have TD is leading by a full second, so fairly still keeping him within punching distance. Wiggles has got 4.6 seconds to make up on Fairley. Aki AMG is 5.8 seconds off Mr. Wiggles, and now it's back to this battle between APS Greg and 1010 in the Alfa Romeo. Just go on board around the banked corner. That's plenty of space Greg has got, but you won't have DRS from the car in front. Is the Alfa Romeo going to attempt something here? Doesn't look like he's close enough to do it. And Hyper, what's happened to Hyper? He has lost 8th position, it seems, to Sam Ken. Now John B looks to be closing up. It doesn't look like the damage was actually as bad as one would have thought there. So it seems to be a tale of two halves as far as the field goes. The people who have spun or crashed, and those who haven't. So going back to the other battles in there, we have Hyper, who had quite a messy qualifying session, still behind the Red Bull versus McLaren, with John B not too far behind on soft compound tyres, it seems. It won't be long, I suspect, before John B passes. There's 6 tenths between the two now, as in front Fairley has gotten within DRS range of the Ferrari of TD, and things are certainly spreading out. Behind, there's a bit of a train falling behind the Lotus Renault, about 4 tenths between the Ferrari. Oh, and we have a safety car that's been called out. That must have been for Supermac retiring. So for those of everybody here that's done on the soft compound tyres, from about Jake Sherritt, KZ, Ripley, they're all in the pits to change tyres. What's Jean Carlos going to do if he stays out? Well, it was going to happen sooner or later, guys, and now it has. The safety car has been deployed. Yes, I've just seen, I've just been informed on the stream, Iros J has a drive-through penalty. He's changing his tyres, but he's got to serve a drive-through off the back of that. I don't think he can actually serve it within the safety car period, though, which is rather concerning for him. As TD now comes into the pits to change tyres, he's going on to the hards, which should theoretically mean his last stop. Almost a little bit of lag there from TD, but he comes out ahead of the McLaren nonetheless. Wiggles now changes tyres And 10-10, that moves him up into 3rd place. Which isn't too bad, all things considered, for him, because he started on those hards. He's going to have to pit nonetheless, but he can go a bit longer and buy some more life for the softs when he changes onto those. IIRL Hyper stayed out in 4th place. Wiggles comes out in 5th. Sean Gregory stayed out in 6th. John B is also pitted to put on the medium compound tyres. So we can expect he'll be stopping again. As he watches, everybody now starts to pile up behind the safety car. It's the green Aston Martin safety car this time around. Might give it a while now before everyone starts to watch out. Oh, and 10-10 went off the track there. Just about held it though. That could have been catastrophic. As everyone struggles to keep their not long now before I think Platty actually dropped down to 16th position, so it won't be long now before he comes up to the back of the field, and IIRL behind him has also got a drive-through penalty to serve, unfortunately. So hopefully it won't be too long before we see these cars catch up to the back and we can get the racing back underway. But this will be a godsend for John B. That will certainly help him to make up for what happened there with the spin. On this twisty section of the track, it's quite hard to make sure we get this to make sure we keep the tires were warm, especially in the hard compound tires. TD has had a few podiums this year, but I don't think he can't remember whether he's actually won. So he's looking good so far for his first win. He's got to ward off the challenges of everybody else behind him, particularly that of FRA John B, who we all know has absolutely lightning pace, but nevertheless still got a lot of work to do. Lando reckons Fairley will get TD. Let's see what happens. What is the safety car going to do? It is in this lap. So there we go. We are going to go on board with TD. We'll just go over to the back. Hyper's doing brilliantly, but the thing is, he hasn't come in. Sean Gregory has actually spun down. When is TD going to drop it? When is he going to pelt away? And it looks like he's done that now. It's not quite the restart he would have wanted. He's 3/10 ahead of AMS Fairley, but it looks like everyone is going to get through round pretty cleanly. Sean Gregory's actually dropped to the back, and IIRL I think is coming in now to serve his drive-through penalty. What's happened now? And it looks like, what was it? I think it might have been Ripley that's gone off. Yes, Ripley has gone off there in the Ferrari. Positions are changing again. Jean Carlos now has spun in the Red Bull. He's reset himself onto the track. I don't think he was supposed to do that. We'll let him off as it's his first race. And there we go. Still carnage at the back, and Sam Ken clearly needs to get a move on. He needs to overtake that Mercedes because he's got that Alpine bearing down his neck. We all know how quick John B is. He's on a soft tyre, but he's got a lovely line out of that long left-hander. We'll go on board with the Red Bull to see what he does. Is he going to chuck it one down to the inside? No, he's not. He's going to hang back and see what he can do come turn 1. DRS is not activated yet. Not quite as wide there, but the Mercedes will have the tow from the Williams above to help him. He's got overtaken everything on. But I think that's enough for Greg, I think, to defend, unless he yeets him down the outside. But it goes around to the outside. Can the Red Bull make it stick? No, he can't. Jake Sharrock has got another time penalty for speeding in the pit lane. As now we see John B going round to the outside. Oh, and it's so close. You have to be so careful to not hit each other there. The concertina on these cars, particularly around this, and that's a lovely shot to get right there. Oh, 1010 has gone off. 1010 has spun in the Alfa Romeo. But you don't know where to look, and Hyper has gone off as well now. You do not know where to look as John B goes down the inside. Oh, there's no contact there. They managed to keep it just clean. It is so action-packed, absolutely. Unbelievable here. And now, so look how close it is. They're pretty much all nose to tail around that. So from about, oh, and the Mercedes has spun now. As APS Greg has also spun. And what's going to happen to the Red Bull and the Alpine? Oh, and it is so close. DRS has now been enabled. It's now nose to tail between 5th, 6th and 7th positions. Goes down to the inside. Unfortunately, I think the Red Bull is lagged behind. What is the Williams going to do? Not much there. And John B takes 5th position. I'm going to blame commentator's curse on that one. So it's not a good day so far for the Alfa Romeos. Sam Ken still behind him. But now that John B is only 8 tenths now behind the Williams, he's making good of those medium tyres. As up top in the lead, or what's happened back there, looks like the Alfa Romeo of 1010 has gone off. Commiseration him, but the gap is closing at the front. It's a nice line that McLaren got out of there. This is where the fight is for the lead. And Lotus Renault looks to have gone down the order now. 1010 has retired. Now with 4 tenths now. He's got the DRS open. We're going to go on board with AMS Fairley. He hasn't got overtake on at the moment though. But we are going to go on board with John B, who overtakes the Williams and goes up into 4th position. He's got 4 seconds to make up on the AlphaTauri and Mr. Wiggles, who I have to say is doing a sterling job there. Running the hard tyres, so we have to presume he's not stopping again. But somebody who will be stopping again is the man closing behind him for 4th position. FRA John B. It certainly must feel like Christmas. So, IFC Dan 79, this is on the Xbox One / the Xbox Series X, this platform. What's happened in Sector 2? God, I don't know where to look on this particular round. And John B has already made up. Oh, and AMS Fairley has spun. AMS Fairley has spun. And now that elevates John B up into 3rd position. As I was saying, you do not know where to look. It's just a case of keeping it together, it seems. But yeah, you do not know where to look, and Aki has got a 5-second penalty for ignoring the yellow flags. John B has now set the new fastest lap with a 12.8. APS Greg comes into the pits. Clearly that damage was a little bit too much. So let's roll on board with the Alpine, and it's just all keeps falling into place for him right now. Certainly a race of survival of the fittest, and so far it is all playing into the Alpine's hands. But Jake Sharrock now does a new fastest lap with 12.6 in the AlphaTauri. Like I said, you just look and you don't know where to look, if I'm honest. Now 3 seconds behind is guy for 2nd place, Mr. Wiggles, but we have to bear in mind that more than likely, unless we get another safety car, I don't think he's in contention for the win, but certainly a podium. He's certainly got the pace to do so. What other close battles have we got on track? This roughly about, I think the closest gap is in between Lotus Renault and Platy, but Platy's got DRS from AMS Fairley. It won't be long. It will not be long at all before John B is on the back of Mr. Wiggles. I can feel it. But he's 5 seconds back from TD, who has controlled this race very, very well from the start. A brilliant getaway at the end. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think definitely Solgod, these mediums are not going to go to the end. It's a bit of a tall order. I mean, just given the way that John B is pushing, and yeah, we may have had a safety car, but they're still quite big on fuel. So, needless to say they can push, but there's still quite a lot of weight behind those cars. I highly suspect that it's coming in. And what's happened in the first sector looks to have been another off maybe for IIRL Hyper, who clearly is not a fan of this track. Let's see what's happened here. Yes, those tyres have just overshot. The surface tyres is unfortunately, he's just got to keep it very, very tidy, but those surface tyre attempts are not going to help him at all, as Fairley now overtakes the Red Bull and goes up into 4th. He'll be ruining that spin because he will have lost the opportunity in many ways to fight for the lead. He'll be hoping for a safety car now to bring the field back closer together. 2.1 seconds now, the gap between FRA John B and Mr. Wiggles. You can just see him there at the front. Look at there, look at the top right of the screen. You can see the AlphaTauri of Mr. Wiggles, who has done an absolutely sterling job on those hard compound tyres, who actually won, like I said, for those who don't know, won the AT2 championship last year. But already that John B has taken about half a tenth then just in that sector alone. John B really is making inroads into that AlphaTauri. But the AlphaTauri is running his own race, so I don't suspect he'll be fighting him too much. And IIRL Hyper is speeding in the pit lane, but I highly suspect he's come in to retire the car. And he has retired the car just as soon as I say it. Next battle is Sam Ken in the Red Bull, behind AMS Fairley. Yellow flags in the first sector, so it looks like Mr. Wiggles must have had an off, and now the Alpine is 4 tenths behind it. This is exactly what John B needed. He's slowly gaining as well on TD. The overall gap between those two now is 4.2 seconds. He's not going to get an overtake here, but maybe he'll get it done at the end of the first DRS zone that they're coming up to right now. Wiggles is definitely due some luck as well, and I think Fairley has... Well, I think that's maybe been Fairley, but no, I think that was just maybe the ghost of IIRL Hyper probably retiring. Yes, it looks like it was. But TD is controlling the field well, and look how close the Alpine is right here. I highly suspect that this is it. As long as John B gets a very, very good exit, which I believe he has done. Yellow in Sector 2. I think that maybe, yes, it's the AlphaTauri of Jake Sharrock. Wiggles defends. He goes down to the outside. And there we have it. John B up into second position. Covers that move off nicely indeed. But the question is now, can those mediums, when all is said and done, given how much he's pushing, go to the end? We know the hards more than likely will, but that's not the case for the medium compound tyres. That's the fight for the lead. It looks things seem to be spreading out generally throughout the field. So we'll just run through the top order for everybody here. So TD leads in the Ferrari from 3.5 seconds from FRA John B in the Alpine. Mr. Wiggles is in third position in the AlphaTauri. AMS Fairley in fourth. Sam Ken is in fifth in the Red Bull. Lotus Renault is sixth in the Williams. Platy is P7 in the Haas. 8th position is Aki AMG in the Williams. 9th is KZ Babo in the Mercedes, and 10th is Iros J in the Alfa Romeo, which has been an ill-fated day for them, if I do say so myself. Now Lotus Renault has got a 3-second time penalty for which I presume is corner cutting. Wiggles is staying with FRA John B, which I have to say is a absolutely remarkable way. And Sam Ken, Yeah, he's coming to the pits, as has Lotus Renault. So those who put on mediums doesn't like to go into the end. The question is, how does John B do it? I mean, I'm lost for an answer myself, to be honest, Padge. It's 3.3 seconds now, because it's just about, I think it's fairly stabilised, where you could probably look in these sections where you need the tyres, where John B will make up the time. The gap seems to be stabilising right now at 3 seconds, and now, yes, it's almost come down to 2 there for a brief moment. It won't be long. Give it a couple more laps and you will see John B right on the back of TD. It's a very, very bold call to make sure those mediums go through to the end. It'll be very, very hard for that to happen. Until then, the closest battle that we can see on board here is between the Mercedes and the Williams. The Williams goes to almost defending almost against fresh air there, because the Mercedes was nowhere near far enough to attempt an overtake. Feeling the need to defend against thin air. And APS Greg looks to have gone off in the Mercedes. And interestingly enough, Mr. Wiggles is actually staying with FRA John B, still within DRS range, so this is quite a remarkable drive so far from the AT2 champion. Can he stay with him through this sector? It's just on the cusp of a second. It's quite a nice line tyre there. It goes over a second, so I don't think he's actually going to get the DRS. He would have broken out of it. And oh, John B's had a moment. John B has fallen down into 3rd position. As Jake Sharrock sets the fastest lap, John B must have had a very bad exit there, which now he's lost over a second to TD, and Mr. Wiggles now goes back into 2nd position. So for those of you on the chat that said he probably pressured and forced into a mistake, I think you very much got your wish. As Sean Gregory pits, having done 22 laps on those tyres, which I think he's in the pits. And now John B got a little bit of making up to do. This will be quite a heroic defence, I think, from Wiggles if he manages to hold this. But now John B is riled, it seems. 3 tenths behind in the DRS zone. We're going to go on board. He's not going to attempt a late yeet into that right-hander. No, he doesn't. If he can stay within about 3 or 4 tenths coming off the back of this banked right-hander here, he'll certainly have a chance to overtake. And oh, Wiggles has spun! Wiggles has spun in the AlphaTauri. Unbelievable stuff. And that is such a shame for the AlphaTauri, because he was doing a tremendous job. He gets back on track and rejoins in 5th position. It wouldn't have done his tyre temperatures any good though, so he probably needs a lap just to take it easy. But that is a massive shame for Mr. Wiggles, and I think it's my commentator's curse, to be honest here, guys. I don't know whether it's down to me actually cursing half of these drivers. Sam Ken holds 8th position from Lotus Renault, and the other Williams of Aki AMG. But this has been quite a comfortable drive so far from TD, which has so far been an absolutely dominant drive. Certainly bad news for TD indeed, but the question is, those hards will last going of the next sort of 5 laps or so. Is that too much of a thing to ask for the Mercedes? What's happened here? I think that must be Jake Sharrock behind him there. The other AlphaTauri behind. I was getting quite confused. Wiggles, very, very unlucky there, but he holds on to 5th position with still a great drive nonetheless. Very controlled drive so far from TD. But if this race is anything to go by, it's a race of pressure. It's a race of who blinks first, who cracks first, when all things are said and done. We know John B has got the pace, even taking a little bit of grass there on the outside. Still a very tidy drive, and Jake Sharrock sits behind him there. He's gained over a second over the last lap or so on TD. And you can just see him there actually up front. You can see TD go behind him there. And KZ has also spun in the Mercedes. You really do not know where to look in this race, I'll tell you that for free. And Aki looks like he's got caught up trying to avoid the Mercedes and has lost a bit of time himself. IIRL Hyper has left the session, it seems, and as TD comes across the line with 11 laps to go, the gap between himself and FRA John B is 3.2 seconds. I highly suspect it won't be long before John B goes up to the back, but the thing is, can he conceivably overtake TD, and can he hold on to that position with his tyres in a competitive state? I see he's wearing Fernando Alonso's helmet there in the Alpine. I think for the sake of the stream it will be a good one. Lando reckons TD will do it. I'm not betting on anything right now, as the next closest battle is between the Williams and the Red Bull. KZ has come into the pits to put on a fresh set of soft tyres. It's 2.9 seconds now between the leaders. 2.8, 2.7 now. It's really coming down. It really is that coming up to the start of the third sector, the left hand and then the right hand and then the left, that's really where the Alpine makes up time. Maybe that's just where the grip with the hard tyres, you don't quite get as much where you need to. Probably wasn't the best line, if I'm honest, from TD. 10 laps to go. 2.6 seconds gap now between the top two. With TD, who hasn't won a race yet this league and is hoping on for a positive result here. He has controlled the field on a very, very dominant drive, but this man, FRA John B, really is reeling him in now. It's all a case of who blinks first. He goes on to the outside, taking the grass, and thankfully he manages to maintain some grip. You can almost visually see, there you go, you can see at the top right hand corner of the screen, we can see the Ferrari in front of him. And it's in these low to mid speed corners, that is where the Alpine is making up the time. 2.3 now, so it wasn't quite the best drive out, but this is where John B really makes up the time. Look at the delta as it comes down. Look at the delta on the top of the screen. It's now to 2.2 right now, so a little bit more time taken out. We're coming up with 9 laps to go now. I think we could be in for a really, really good finish here. If a safety car comes out right now, it would be an absolute godsend, I would think. So he would be able to ditch those mediums, go onto the soft, and it will be a straight fight with TD. And it looks like Ripley has had a moment in the other Ferrari. It's 2.1 now between the leaders. I can't take my eyes off this now. For those of you hoping for a little bit more screen time, apologies. We're going to go on board with the Ferrari, who now only has a 2-second lead. Are there any back markers coming up? There's just the Mercedes up in front, so they're not going to be a factor as long as they keep themselves clean and don't drive into anything. It's 1.9 now between the two. It's going to be a very, very close finish between the two drivers. 1.8 now. This is coming into the section where John B really does make up the time. Oh, and it's down to 1.6 now. 1.7. 1.6 now. This is coming up now. We've got 8 to go after this one, and I highly suspect it will be the start of the next lap, if not the one before that, where we see DRS goes here. And and Jake Sharrock has crashed. Thankfully, it's not terminal, so that won't quite bring out the safety car. But the Ferrari has it all to do up front. You can just see it behind your screen. The Alpine, 1.5 seconds now separates them both. TD, having dominated the field, having dominated the race from the front, is up against John B, who is throwing everything but the kitchen sink at him to take that race win in the Alpine. I know I drive an Alpine myself, so naturally I've been inclined to support the Alpine driver, but I've got to give it to TD here for what has been a very controlled drive. Probably one of the drives of the season, because it's been very, very consistent from him, very, very strong. And now John B 1.1 seconds behind now. He's doing this with 18 lap old medium tyres. I'm very surprised that they haven't worn off yet. The gap stabilizes at 1.1, 7 to go, and they cross the line. This is incredible stuff. It's now within a second now between the two, and I think Jake Sharrock has gone off yet again and crashes through into the pits. Now that he's crashed in the pits, I don't know whether that's going to throw out a safety car here. And it's now 6/10 between the two. He's lost half a second in that first sector. So much to do now. Apparently Mark D did 35 laps on the hard tyre, and now we see John B really on the back of the Ferrari. It's so close between the two. Can TD hold him off? Are those tyres going to last? It would be one of a kind sort of drive from John B if they do last. They'll come now down to the banked right-hander. Not quite the best launch. TD is going to have to deploy his energy to defend. I don't think it's close enough here for the Alpine to attempt an overtake now. He's showing him the car though, letting him know that he's there. It is so close. The Mercedes is coming out of the pit lane. But thankfully, not in front of these, not in between these two. That would have upset John B massively. And it all depends what kind of drive you can get off of that banked corner. TD has it all to do. He has got to resist a million loads, like so much pressure now from the Alpine, who is an absolute mystery how his tyres are lasting at this point. And look how much inroads he's making in on the Ferrari. It's coming up now to about 4/10. Not the room here to overtake, so he can save his energy, and then again I think maybe TD can as well. But oh, look at the Constantina. That was not the corner that TD needed at all. It's 2/10 now, so this is certainly John B's strongest chance to take the lead of this Grand Prix. It's not the best exit though from the Ferrari. It's 3/10. This is certainly John B's chance to take the lead. As we go now, he goes round to the outside, and there we go. And just like that, John B has taken the lead of the Dutch Grand Prix. And oh, and TD has crashed. Oh no, and TD has crashed out, having lost the lead. He's reset the third spot. Oh, what an absolute shame for TD, who drove an absolutely storming race. Crashed out at the worst place, and now he's got to drive all the way down to the end with no front wing. He stays out of the Haas's way quite sensibly, but now John B has retaken the lead. What a shame. What an absolute shame. Now, I don't care what you guys say, I'm not putting that down to commentator's curse. Oh, and Lotus Renault spins off in the Williams. That hands 5th position to the Alfa Romeo of Iros J. Oh, and Greg spins in the Mercedes, and Iros J now up into 4th position. And John B, how has he done this? It's an absolutely gutting drive for TD, who's been absolutely dominating the pack, but now comes in Now John B looking to take it easy. He's dropped a little bit of time now to the McLaren, who probably senses an opportunity to win. But, oh, you gotta spare a thought for TD. But that just goes to show just how quick John B is. And TD comes out now in 10th place. Yellow's in sector 3. That might be, yes, that's Jean Carlos, who reverses back and probably damages his rear wing. Probably isn't the wisest thing to do. And all the John B has to do now is just keep it on the black stuff, and it comes down. It's 3 laps to go. He's 4.2 seconds ahead of Platty in the Haas, with IIRL J 4th in the Alfa Romeo. Platty has probably gone onto the radar. It's been a very consistent drive. AMS Fairley's recovered well from that spin. And Lotus Renault's got another time penalty for multiple warnings, which I presume is corner cutting. What can AMS Fairley do? With 3 laps to go, I very much doubt he can close up to the back of the Alpine. The Alpine does not need to push. He's got the lead, and he's just got to take it easy, just to make sure he gets through. Hopefully, if somebody spins, then TD can rack up another point or 2. But you got to take off your hat to. Then again, it's just yet another consistent and brilliant drive. Yellow flags in the second sector as he comes round the banked left-hander to start the penultimate lap of the Grand Prix. 3.8 seconds now separates him and AMS Fairley. Very consistent drive so far from John B. As the next closest fight on track is between Sam Ken and IIRL J. The Mercedes of, I think, may have been Greg goes off. And what does the Red Bull do? Goes down to the inside and takes 4th position for now. But let's see what he's got in terms of penalties. He's got 5 seconds, so I doubt he's going to make up 5 seconds in 2 laps. Which he does would be quite extraordinary. 3.4 seconds now covers the top 2. TD takes the fastest lap. That time as the Mercedes spins out. It's 3.2 seconds now. He can afford to take it easy. 24 laps those medium tyres have done, as is for Platty as well. The closest battle on track seems to be P4 and P5, as the other Red Bull of Jean Carlos looks to be staying out of the way. I think he's ghosted at the moment, so it's not been the best day so far for Mercedes, with neither of them looking to be scoring at the moment. But with 4 tenths in between IIRL J and Sam Ken, is the Alfa Romeo going to attempt to move? No, he's not. As Mercedes goes off yet again, it's certainly been a very controlled drive so far from John B, who you find in these streams, you just look at this guy and you just think, how the hell does he do it? He's made those tyres last 25 laps, goes over the long left-hander into the final sector now, as the Alpine, who is very late to the grid, comes across the final corner now. We'll take one last view across the banked corner with 2.6. He triumphed when everyone else cracked around him. FRA John B comes across the line to win the Dutch Grand Prix. AMS Fairley takes 2nd position in the McLaren. And we have Platty, who's also done a brilliant job to nurse his tyres, takes the final podium slot. Sam Ken crosses the line, but loses 4th position thanks to a penalty. IIRL J takes 4th as a result. Lotus Renault now comes across the line to cap off 6th position in the Williams. And Aki takes saves, but now Sean Gregory actually takes 6th place in the Aston Martin. TD takes 9th, and Mr. Wiggles unfortunately takes TD, takes 10th position. Ripley comes along to finish the race in 11th position. Fortunately, commiserations to him as well. And there we have the last Ferrari coming over the line. And what has been a very eventful race, thankfully, with only one safety car. So there we have it, guys. Commiserations to TD, I think, who I think will get my shout of driver of the day, with all things considered. But John B puts in the performance that you more or less expect from him. So well done to him for what was a truly brilliant drive. Certainly a weird feeling, I agree, Padge. Now with the Alpine takes the lead and takes the win. You come to expect this from John B. Just so consistent and so brilliant, so well timed. And unfortunately, TD, after lots of the lead, spun out and finished in 9th position. But it took the fastest lap, so they will earn him that extra point at least. Those are some commiseration. So there we have the top. John B takes the win. Fairley takes 2nd in the McLaren. 3rd is Platty. 4th, Iros J. 5th, Sam Ken. 6th is Sean Gregory. 7th and 8th of the 2 Williams are Lotus Renault and Aki AMG. 9th is TD, and 10th is Mr. Wiggles. And from Ripley all the way down, they will not be scoring. We have 5 DNFs from IIRL Hyper and from Jake Sharrock all the way down, so 6 DNFs unfortunately. So don't know what to say. Just keep your head up high, TD. It was a very, very strong drive nonetheless. So I think a lot of positives to take from that one. So commiserations to you there. So yeah, there we have it, guys. That brings an end to the AT1 race at the Dutch Grand Prix for IIRL Racing. So do stick around, do follow us for Sunday for the AT2 race, which you will see me race and hopefully not crash into anything. Well done to John B for winning this particular round. And there we have it, guys. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you guys on the next stream.